All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Zoom. I believe I'll be hosting this again with Brad N7ER. Good evening to you, Brad.
Hello.
And
I'm back now.
we have our panel of expert, which is Mike and 07RF. Is there anything that anyone would like to see, or how can we best use this time for everyone? Would these be best as an educational with a seminar topic? I'm thinking things like throwing a channel into the community code plug. I think somebody requested the ACB code plug builder. I was thinking of doing one on audio levels and doing a live demo of good and bad audio levels and the tools we have to try to correct that, and where you might change those in any tone or something along those lines. Those were a couple of the ideas that we've been kicking around. But if anybody has anything they'd like to see, not necessarily for tonight, but in general, we'd probably like to know about it.
Well,
Maybe,
Benton gave a big head nod to the code plug using ACB.
Okay.
maybe something with the APRS. I tried to find some information on it, but a lot of it's not geared towards using APRS with the anytones or anything like that. It's it's all analog stuff. So I'd like to know more about the APRS as far as it relates to the anytones.
So I think that there's a bit on that on our website, PNWDigital.net/APRS. I'm just going to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure that was the link. And I'm pretty sure that was geared towards anytones, and it is. So PNWDigital.net/APRS, and you should have everything there that you need.
Cool. All right, I'll check that out.
Thanks, Brad.
And then down to the bottom are the radio, well, the specifics for either digital or the analog, or the 38390. It looks like does it as well. Anyway, for the anytones specifically, there's some these pages for with graphics. These are my current graphics then. I don't use it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't use either. As far as I know, that's all current.
Okay, well, it's a start point anyway.
Yeah, this is all pretty fresh stuff. This was all put up pretty recently. So
That looks fairly accurate, actually.
Okay, if it is, I don't know how many variations or firmware upgrades there are, how many of these have changed, either position on the screen or options have changed. Don't know, but it's there. There's at least that. So yeah, PNWDigital.net/APRS does both the digital and the analog. I'm gonna stop sharing now.
okay.
But
yeah, that's all current info within the last couple weeks.
Okay. All right.
6/1 actually.
As of
June 1st.
June 1st, so 2 weeks old. So that's about as fresh as it can be. All right. Did anyone else have anything to bring up?
If you don't mind, I'd like to discuss what I heard on the air tonight regarding the Portland area system cutting out.
Oh, sure.
So I normally listen on the West Hills repeater, and I've noticed lately that there's a lot of cutting out of conversations, and I've got a brand new radio with a green button on it here, and it's been working really good. But lately it's had a problem, I guess, and I don't know if the problem is the radio or the problem is with the system. But I noticed when Mike was giving his announcements tonight that there was a long period there, I think about the third time, that that there was no sound coming in, but I could see him on NetWatch, and but there was absolutely no sound. And later, there were people on NetWatch that I couldn't hear. So I switched over to Mount Scott, and a similar thing happened with other people. So I don't know if that helps to diagnose the problem, or maybe it's between my ears. Who knows?
When Mike was doing his announcement, I don't know if I was the only one that heard it. I've been listening on Mount Scott, but the back end of it cut out. But Dave, you were basically gave a synopsis, so I don't know if he actually cut out or not.
Okay. I know that I tried, I used my HT and keyed up on West Hills, and it was okay for a little bit there. And then it did look like there was some pretty high loss on it. So Mike actually said that he was able to hear me even with the loss. And it was some fairly substantial loss. So might have just been timed out right, but it does look like there might be something going on there. I didn't necessarily see it on Mount Scott, but they're both easy enough for me to work. From here, I can hit Corbett, West Hills, Mount Scott, Providence, PMC, Ariel. So I've got a, for those for sure, and probably a little bit more. So I'm blessed to have a few that I can hit here. So I'll try working a little bit and see if I can get it to fail.
Yes, Mike
How's it
also
look,
dropped
Mike?
out on aerial for that period, about the last 2/3 of his announcement. Disappeared from aerial. He was still showing up on NetWatch, but nothing coming through on aerial.
So that's three.
Now, they're all Portland machines that are linked together. Could there be something going on there?
Well, linked.
And
They're linked on local 2.
Local 2, yeah, but it's a change in the system.
Yeah, I was listening back and forth between Lookout and Mount Scott, and we lost Mike for quite a period of time on those two machines. So,
So I was listening over on Ned, which is where I'm running the net from, and I did have them on the MM. I think usually we think that the MMs would break first, and that the repeaters might stay up a little bit, although that's not always true. But Mike, any thoughts about what you're seeing there?
I assume I have audio. Oh yeah, I have audio. It's weird when you share your screen, it screws everything else up in Zoom. So I wasn't sure it was sharing, and I wasn't sure if my audio was on. So what you're seeing now is kind of one of the back end screens on the C bridge, and that flat line that is about 15 seconds across the board is the keep alives. And that's kind of how we measure how well a repeater is connected to the network. It's one of the first things we look at. And that flat line is exactly what we want. And that's essentially perfect. So it looks like the repeater is connected to the C bridge and working perfectly. So that is of no help. That tells us nothing. So next thing to look at, not that this really is important other than, what is that, West Hills?
Correct.
Which one is that? Somebody sees it, let me know.
It might be ARL or not ARRG.
ARG.
AR,
There it is.
AGH?
Go.
Just the
No,
number.
that's
Right there. Yeah, you got it.
Too many
Number
people.
4.
Number 4. No, it's not number 4.
No,
That's
No.
4
come
right
down.
there. Oh, 4.
Come
R.
down,
13.
come down.
Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. So that will basically manages does not like slot on media on 2. Okay. So reject. Well, that might be the key. And I'm scrolling up looking for, so since 1741 right there, it may not like it. So why and what can I do about it? Kind of cryptic. First thing I would do is knock the repeater off the network and force it to reaffiliate. And I wouldn't necessarily do that during a net. But it would be one of the things. It's kind of like Windows. When something goes wrong, what do you do in Windows?
Restart.
You restart it. That's right. And that's what I would do here is restart the manager, force the repeater to reconnect and see if that straightened it out. So anyway, that's kind of the back end stuff. One of the things I would do to, if I knew that this was a problem, like Larry had, you were experiencing it live, it would have been awkward during the net. But like say if we had this back channel like we're doing Zoom now, which is what the admins do before, we open it up to the group, it would allow us to, or enable us to chat about that problem and maybe fix it on the fly. But
Hey, Mike, on the C bridge, what tab did you do to get to that list that you came up with there?
I don't
What
know
tab
if you
was that?
have access to it, but it would be diagnostics, right? Oh, you're not seeing it. It's diagnostics, and then go down to the managers down below. I don't have it. Let's see if I have it up. I'm not sharing it. Yeah, go down to diagnostic on the managers, the last tab on the bottom.
Okay. Because I look at the graph to see if I got the straight line or not. So,
right.
That sort of thing.
Mike, could you also look at Mount Scott and see if it has a similar tail?
Okay.
I was listening to Mount Scott the last third or so of the net, and it was very similar to
Okay.
to
So
West
again,
Hills.
I have Corbett, Mount Scott I have Corbett, Arg, Gresham, Mount Scott. See, I don't have the manager named that. So it's called something else. So I have to go back to NetWatch and see what it's called. Still looking. I've got like 6 screens open to try to track this stuff.
KA7 AGH 16
Oh,
31
it's
13.
AGH. Okay. Yeah. I'm getting there. if you knew what I did for the first 3 hours for the meeting, you'd know why I'm a little slow.
No
Okay.
worries, Mike.
Okay, so that graph is almost perfect flat line, not quite as good as the other one, but so close that I would say there was no problem with that repeater either, as far as its connection to the C bridge. Let's see, I think I can share that just for reference. I'm getting good exercise here on sharing.
Mike, on that graph, you know, does that sort of itself? Because, you know, it first starts out as like little close dots, and then I'll come back later and it's a solid red line.
Well, am I sharing it? It doesn't look like I
Yep.
am. Oh,
Yep.
I am.
Yes,
Okay.
you are.
We see it.
That's funny because it doesn't show me sharing it right now.
No, you're not right now, but you were.
Okay. Okay, if I'm sharing it, it's not rectangled, so it doesn't have that broad outline showing me that's the screen that's being shared, so I can't see it. But if you look at this one is not quite as flatline. There's a few outliers, but we have some graphs that are way up here. They're huge. They're all over, way up high, very bad. This flat line is good. So AGH's connection is quite good. Now there's a lot of other things that can enter into the reason for having a repeater not being able to repeat the network traffic well, but it's got a basic connection. So then I'd have to go look at other screens, like the connections between the C bridges themselves. And a lot of times those will be a mess. Let's see. So I don't remember which one of these is. That's why you can see why I have so many screens open, because when you click into something, you don't know what it does unless you know all the numbers and all the base notations. So, well, if I guess for right now, this isn't worth going into that deeply. There certainly were problems. Larry mentioned them. I don't see on the surface where the issue is. So I would have to really delve into some of those back end screens and try to figure out why that particular repeater is not repeating Washington 2 traffic well. Usually a restart, if there's any problem, a restart takes care of it, just like Windows. But I didn't know about it. Some of these screens have a color scheme that shows us when there's a problem. And if there's a warning, we get a yellow on certain repeaters. And that yellow will say, hey, something's amiss, and we can investigate or ignore it. I didn't see any of that tonight. In fact, everything was online, including OSO. OSO is one of our most problematic repeaters in having a good internet connection. It goes yellow constantly, or falls off the network. We don't see it at all. So anyway, Larry, bottom line, hey, it's a crapshoot. I can't tell you why that repeater tonight was, marginal. At this point, I can't tell you that. And the logs are only good for, depending on the network activity, for 30 minutes, 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours on a slow night. So you have to get in there, investigate fairly soon, or you have nothing. The logs just roll off, it's gone. So.
Well, I appreciate you looking at it. Tomorrow,
Thanks, Mike.
Tomorrow I will switch radios to the blue button radio and see if there's any difference. And
You know, for
Man,
nets, I typically have 3 repeaters and 3 radios besides our back channel, just to have some idea what's going on in the network. And, you know, it gets a little overwhelming keeping track of everything, but when you hear garbage out of one radio, it's a clue there's an issue. But most folks, you know, don't have 3 radios and 3 repeaters that they can listen to. Nor would they want to, I would think. But when you're trying to make everything to, you know, fly as best as possible, you listen to more of the assets to, you know, have a better insight in the network operation. And hey, it's fun.
Mike, on that restart you're talking about, is that something that can be initiated from the repeater owner's end, or is that something that you have to do?
Yeah, I think that is for the admins. That's a high level command, and that is not normally given out to the repeater owners because there's other things that it enables, and it can, you know, muck things up. There's about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's 5 levels of access. The repeater owners are at 3. And the very lowest is 1, which just gives you access to a couple of those screens. Now that we've turned on Peer Watch, Peer Watch is attached publicly, it gives you an idea of what the repeater's doing. So anybody on the network can look at every repeater and see what it's doing, if it's active, if it's on the network. And then coupled with NetWatch, you can see who's on the network and what talk group they're on. We didn't have that active for years, but it is now because it's part of the back-end services that Dave and Steve, Eric are now using to, you know, push other projects. So if you haven't looked at Peer Watch, you know, everybody knows NetWatch, or it's Call Watch now, but Peer Watch shows you the repeaters directly, their activity, their status. So it's a good resource. I keep both of them open on every Seabridge. I have 6 tabs that come open when I open up one of the browsers. I have a browser I use just for Seabridge watching, and it's on a secondary monitor. So it's always up, so I can kind of just click through the tabs and get a quick look at the overall network. So anyway, a lot of information out there if you want to poke around for it, or, you know, if you're interested in it. Most of it is not of interest to, you know, most users. It just doesn't mean anything to them. But it's helpful if you're trying to ferret it out. I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say, I think for the casual user, the little icon on the left-hand side of the repeaters page is what drives from that page. And that's the reason we turned Peer Watch on, was that so I could grab that, and that gives you the little icon if it's up or down. That's probably the easiest way to quickly distill some of that information. Another one is PNWDigital.net/status.php that shows assets that are up and down based on the same information source, but it shows you so you don't have to do the hover over to see how long something's been up or down, and it kind of gives you a little history of it over the last 24 hours and over the last week. Those are interesting pages. That's what I use during the net when I'm calling the repeaters for each district. Something very similar gets sent out to all the stakeholders in the morning so that they can see what's going on with the system.
I'm showing that now.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
a couple things I'll point out is like my special project, wherever it is. The order of these is by the Washington State areas, and I'm in 6, right? 6?
You're in 7.
Oh, 7. Well, then why isn't that showing? Oh, I know why, because Winthrop is not on this map yet, or on this page.
Yeah, well, we probably don't have it turned on there.
Right. Well, what I was going to get to is Winthrop shows offline, even though it's online. And part of that is because some of her internet connections, in fact, the Winthrop repeater is on Starlink. I think, as far as I know, it's the only one on Starlink. And Starlink does some weird stuff with their IPs, and they're not friendly. They don't support ping. You can't get back into the server that you're on. So in the case of Winthrop, it shows offline, even though it's online. So like if you look at Seattle Metro, we know that that machine's been off for 2 months. They lost their internet, and I suggested they try the LTE router that I've been playing with. It's very inexpensive and works well with repeaters, but so far nothing. So anyway, no idea when Seattle Metro is coming up, but this page shows it's been offline for 2 months, and that's true. And Winthrop is on, but it's just not listed yet. So even though it's online, it's going to show offline like Seattle. Not true. But for the most part, all these repeaters show correctly. So all our assets are listed nifty. You can quick look and you can see what's working, what's connected to the network. And if it isn't, over here, like how long it hasn't been or last seen, 4 months for Newburgh. Prineville's another one that's been supposedly coming on the network for years. And I think, Dave, when you created this page, that was 5 months ago. They're still not there.
Right.
Mike, a comment about that. This page is not on the menus on the PNWNet website.
It's
not on any of the.
It's not. I don't believe it's under services, possibly.
We haven't shared it yet. Tonight
we haven't shared this one, but I think
No.
services has it listed as a menu item. Let's see.
You think?
Well, I'm gonna go look.
It's something that we can share. So.
Yeah, it probably should be, huh?
The information is essentially the same as what's on the repeaters page, or
Yeah,
what
just
someone
gives
could.
you everybody at one whack.
Yeah, what you could glean from it. We need to make an update there for Whitby now that the finals are repaired.
You're right. It's not listed. So no, this is a secret page right now. So don't anybody look at that URL right there.
Yeah, it's top secret. There actually is a little thing you could put in there that is a little secret. If we take a look at, let's say, we have Gary with us. Do you want to show him that one, Mike? Do you mind keep on sharing?
Which one do you want?
Status.
Oh, sure. Let me, ding, ding, ding. My Zoom has gone out the window because I can't see when I share it any longer.
I could bring it up.
I think I got it here now.
Okay, so let's take a look at ours. If you scroll down just a little bit.
Which one are you broke?
It's 3. There he is. Do you, let me figure this out.
Well, if you're going to talk about it, you ought to share it. That makes more sense.
Oh, fine. Okay, let me get a connection going here. Actually, I have to do it this way, right? I have to come in with the zoom.pnwdigital.net. I
We
need
have
this to
not
be on my
played with
laptop.
all these features that we have on Zoom now yet.
Continue. I'm not joining with audio because my audio's on the other one. And I'll close that and I'll just share. And we'll share screen share. And this is the screen I was talking about here. So if you click on the online or offline, so say if we go down to Ocean Shores here, you click on actually that repeater's been up since we put it up for the last week. Anyhow, I guess that's all it goes back. Something that's been bouncing here. Let's take a look at Brad's repeater. He just put it back online, so it probably bounced a few times. So you can actually see a history on it here that it was online between 2105 and 2110, and then it was offline until the 16th, and then it was on from 1415 to 1420, and then it was on from 1425 to 1525
What a
for
flaky
60
box.
minutes, and then it went offline again, and and it was up for 40 minutes, and that was up for 3 hours, and currently it's been up, and it's been up for 51 minutes. So it's kind of just a little history of what the repeater's been doing.
The flaky owner.
Yeah, that too.
One or the other, right?
Both.
So the ones that are 100% aren't so interesting, but Kelso. For instance,
show
you
the
can
unknowns.
see-
Why we have unknowns.
Well, you kind of cover. I'll do it, but
Yeah.
you can see here that this kind of, it looks like it goes down every night at around 2:30, and then it comes back up around 3:30 in the morning. So that's kind of interesting what's going on there. But the unknowns are the ones that don't connect into our C bridges. That's how yours should be showing now, Mike. Actually, the one is it should be coming up as an unknown. And the reason it's unknown is because for Haystack, that's a different C bridge. And for Mike's, where he's connecting in through the way he is on the Starlink, it's got the CG NAT on it, and we can't get a status on it. So the BC repeaters, I don't have them on here, but the BCs would be the same case where because they're connecting to their own C bridge, we don't see when they go up or down really. Does anyone have any questions about this?
We put them to
Very
sleep.
good, very helpful, by the way.
Thanks. So this is the information. If there's something in here on the repeaters page, that's what grays it out. So we can go here to the repeaters page here, and like Coeur d'Alene is grayed out here, and that's the same message that's here. And this little symbol over here is showing up or down. And if you hover over it, it'll actually tell you how long it's been up or down. But if you really want all the details on so this is how I can kind of try to catch up on what's going on the system when I start the net up, is to go through here and call each district and have my little list of each repeater and whether they're on or off and for instance, when I did Washington 5, I could say that Ruston's up, the Baldy's still down. And I know that it's been down for some time. So, that's not new and it's not a surprise. So,
We lost access to the site because the U.S. Forest Service changed the keys, and now they're just getting around to handing out new keys to all the tenants. So it's been a very painful process. So no Baldy. That's 3 repeaters that are offline for 2 or how long now? Well, anyway, they've been offline because we can't get up there to see what's wrong.
all this comes out of the database. The database is a project that that Steve and 9VW started with, and then I jumped on it and started building out the repeaters page. And this all gets derived from the database, and like the frequencies that are in here all come from there, and that's what goes into the ACB files. And so we've got one place we either get it right or we get it wrong, but there's only one place to fix it. And Mike now has an admin page where he can change this stuff. He used to have to go into the HTML and change all that. It was pretty painful for him to do. And now there's a little template where he can go in and just update this stuff. And
having these live pages, huge help, just labor saving. Steve, I think probably 2 years ago you started that project. We've done something with the Sea Bridge, and there's, hundreds of sea bridges around the country, if not the world, that are doing what we do, although not as nearly as big as we are. But no one has ever been able to take the Sea Bridge apart from its programming level, extract the data, parse it, put it in a database, and then start doing stuff with it. And the live repeater page is one of the things that is very new. And the talk group picker, Steve wrote the page for that. A lot of this stuff is now automated, which means it's essentially live, and it requires less manual input, at least on my part. And it's been wonderful. And we're just kind of at the tip of the spear. There's so much data available. What was we talked about? Sending out an email to new users. If they click on any repeater, it'll just send out a welcome message to any new person that has never been on the network before. It's stuff like that we can do now because we have all that data. It's just a matter of, plucking the data out and putting it in a form that will enable us to accomplish that email. I think the suggestion was an SMS message came over one of the IO groups. Send out an SMS message to a user first time they click on the network, welcome aboard. And our SMS isn't sophisticated enough to where that would even be really realistic. An email is probably the best thing we have going for us. And even then, we don't have email addresses for a lot of these folks. If they're not members, we don't have an email address. If they haven't listed on QRZ, we don't have an email address. So, it's pie in the sky stuff, but the heavy lifting was done, over the last 2 years. Steve worked on that. Well, I worked on it. Now Dave's picked up and created pages using that data. It's a joint effort. And I got to tell you, I'm very appreciative of the back end work that's being done now, because I was just doing it all manually. And, things were stale. Our web pages are still stale. We have web pages that are still on the old style before 7HQ. Michael came aboard and redesigned the website. Well, he didn't do all the pages. He did some of them, and I've created a whole bunch of pages since, and they're all the old style because that's what I do. I don't do his whiz bang stuff. I'm still using a web editor that came out in 2003 called Front Page. They don't make it anymore, but that's what I use because that's what I know. And I'm too old, I tell myself, to learn something new. So Steve's
That's a state of
carrying the
mind.
load.
Mike, you keep it there with your buggy whips, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got a barking dog here to keep folks in line.
Yeah, an amusing anecdote about this, the talk group picker, that this thing was actually created originally as a tool so I could see what was going on in the database. I had absolutely no intention of it becoming part of the product that's
Right.
used on a daily basis.
Well, Steve had to learn how the C bridge worked in the programming just to understand to move forward with a database. And so he pretty much knows how the C bridge works. He doesn't program it, but he can parse the data now, and that data is golden. It's, I don't know, maybe it's hard for the front end users to appreciate it, but I'll tell you on the back end, it's valuable and now kind of indispensable because we 3 or 4 of us now rely on that. Like the picker, that's I called it a booger picker originally, and that's how the picker stuck. But it was really to figure out the boogers, the problems we had in trying to parse all the data out of the C bridge programming. And so Steve's tool to help himself, I adopted, and actually we've expanded that picker into some other areas to help the admins. And I've seen stuff in the C bridge. I played with the C bridge for 10 years and I think I know it pretty well, but I still get lost in it. And the tools that Steve has created by pulling the data out, I see stuff in there I had no clue. Mistakes, well, boogers, I called them. We fixed hundreds of boogers since Steve got the data parsed out. And we can now see it in some intelligent forms by sorting various fields in Excel. And it's wonderful. It's a great tool to kill our boogers and create other interesting
We know that,
add-ons.
yeah, we know that this is what's on that repeater,
Yeah.
you know, and that something didn't get dropped and we forgot to pull it from the web page, or something, a talk group didn't get added and we forgot to put it on, or you know, whatever might have happened like that. These are all regenerated every night, I believe. Right, Steve?
That's correct.
So it keeps the system a lot easier or more accurate as far as the information about it that we can share with front-end users, to try to give you the best picture of what we see behind the scenes,
Yep.
such as the status page or exactly what's on which repeaters or things like that.
Steve, when you run the processes, what's a typical runtime? I know it's like 40 minutes, an hour to generate some of these.
So the actual import, where I take the C-Bridge data and import it into the database, the whole process for all 3 C-Bridges runs in the neighborhood of about 36, 37 minutes. And then there's some other queries that generate some of the tables, like the talk group picker and the I lost it, the ACB files, that kind of stuff. That one actually runs in a couple of minutes, but it's the big one picking everything apart that takes a while. It's kind of interesting to watch it.
The up and down on the repeaters, it's checked every 5 minutes, and it does a complete refresh on that every 5 minutes by looking at each of the 3 C bridges, seeing what's actually connected, and then updating any entries that need to be updated based on that. We
Dave
could
is,
probably run it
oh.
quicker, but every 5 minutes seems to be accurate enough.
Dave has some stuff that he's created. The audio level, of course, with the VU meter, but there's some other stuff. You've got recent callers, frequent callers, all sorts of different sorts that kind of give us a clue. Like some folks
And-
come on and click, 4 months ago, and we can see that, hey, the last time they were on the network was 4 months ago. It really isn't necessarily prime data, but when you're wondering, like, where'd that guy go? Did he, die or just give up on DMR? And so it's real easy to see, hey, this fellow was on 3 months ago. So send him an email. What happened?
So this is where the audio page comes off, but beyond that,
well, go back to audio, because there's a whole bunch of stuff in audio that you don't realize is there if you start filling these fields in. Dave, put your own call in there.
Sure. So if you put in either your call sign or your RID, yeah, you can. I'm looking at loud people. You can see how you've been doing. I'm not sure why I'm not getting a graph there.
You have a low average.
Well, it seems like
Something's amiss. Try a different call.
I think, you know what it is? It's because it's not just the RID, it's the call sign.
It seems like a failure to communicate.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, we'll get this going. Oh, Mo
So,
better. Okay.
You can see that there's some variation in there.
But your average is very close to the system.
Yep.
And
you can look up, a talk group as well. So if we look at 103153 for tonight, you can see everyone who came in on the net.
And the average for the talk group also.
The average for the talk group is more or less the average for the system.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that, generally speaking, we were, Matt, I think that was the first one you did where you were kind of garbled. I think that was on your earpiece.
That was on that other headset or whatever you
Yeah, so I would kind of throw that out. But you can see,
and these levels are very compressed. One LED really is a dramatic difference. So it may not look like much of a difference, but like I say, an LED or two on this screen is really quite a large difference.
this guy here, he's a troublemaker.
Oh, he did that? When did he do that? Oh, that had to be a jammer or somebody using my radio ID.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
The guy who did the announcements, that
yeah,
was it. But there's this. Now, this data, I also re-roll it without the audio levels. And if you're included in that, then you also go into this recent callers list. And this is since the last time we brought it up. I think we had a system problem back here in December, or I rewrote it or something. But this is basically kind of the log of everyone who's come on the system since that point. Now, like I just saw here, like W9SK Stephen, well, he's been on the system for years. The first time he came on the system was not Christmas Eve, but it's the first time I caught him on the system. The same with Mike. That might be the first time he used that RID on the system.
And also, this is looking at limited talk groups because we
Right.
haven't really dedicated a MMDVM for the whole network. This is
So
being shared with something else.
yeah, so this is really only, people who are doing parrots or audio test or during the nets. But it's the first time I've caught you. The first time I've logged you as being on the system. So it creates a nice little list. But the other thing, if you have a Motorola radio, there might be a tool out there that you could put in people. And Motorola, of course, has a limited capacity. It only takes 1,000 contacts. And with the number of DMR IDs out there up around 200,000, not sure where we're at on which side of that, but it's certainly more than 1,000 in any case. So this lists some of the more frequent people. And of course, Dan with the happy hour net gets the most frequent spot as far as, traffic during nets, because he's running a net 5 days a week. Peter's got the oldies group, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have Wednesday nights. Duff has Mondays. Steve has his Monday night net.
Wow, you
Ed
guys are
has,
flappers.
yeah, Ed has the MCOM net. Dave has the coffee net one of the days. Jim and Craig have it the other days. And then we start getting down the users, and Barry's on a lot of the nets. So it picks off people like that. So, but you can put this list into your Motorola code plug using a tool, and that way you can go down and pick how many people you're taking, and hopefully getting the more frequent people.
Into the
Since
code
you've
book.
got to get the most bang for your buck when you're putting people in for that. If someone's only used the system once or twice, they'll fall off this list. So these are all available on the services page, and if they help you, then great. Any questions about any of those?
You said that was on, what is it? Services that PNW or PNW
Services.pnwdigital.net.
All right.
I'll put it in the chat.
That'd be good to know, because I'd like to test my audio levels when I'm not in a semi-noisy environment with this earpiece thing I got. It's from Bridgecom. They said it's supposed to be really good.
Well, I think Mike and I would both tell you that it's really bad. and if anyone else wants to give an opinion there, yeah, it was not good.
Well, I'm all ears. I can return it if it's if everyone's saying it's garbage. I'll return it.
There's the one link. This one's public. It should come off one of the menus, and then the other tool that we were showing you there was that's actually wrong. Disregard that one. It's www.pnwdigital.net/status PHP. So you can look at both of those. It's 9:04. I'm still willing to go, but I think this is usually when we try to wind it down. So if anybody has anything else.
Yeah, I have.
I enjoyed
one-
it this session.
Good.
One question.
Sure, Gary.
Okay, where the coax comes in to the repeater, looks like it might be bleeding some RF. And when I'm on the other radio and somebody comes in on the digital, it blows the radio all the way out.
Well, that sounds more like descents. You've got a radio there, a repeater is transmitting like 40 watts out of that antenna, and that antenna presumably is within 30 or less feet from whatever antenna you're using for your radio.
Yep.
And it's just a lot of power in the area, and it's overwhelming your weaker signal that you're trying to listen to. That is descents. And what it does is numbs your receiver while that repeater's up, and that's just part of life with an automated transmitter. I have it with APRS. You know, I run APRS, and when it pops up for its blips, it knocks whatever I'm listening to. It just squelches off. You know, if I'm listening to FM, it just mutes. It just goes away briefly and comes back. Well, the repeater might be up for hours. So if it's up for hours, you basically should be listening to the repeater and not any of your personal stuff, because you'll be fighting that descents. Yeah. Until you get it depends on your radio and how narrow it is. You might have to get a few hundred feet away from the antenna before your radio has less tendency to be descents by the repeater. Did nobody tell you that when you wanted a repeater there at your place?
No.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
No, I'm kidding, but no, it's a problem. I have the same thing. I have 4 repeaters that bark here out of my house. And so it's a nightmare. I have one antenna down in a gully, the farthest antenna I have, and I have a dual band radio on it. And that's almost what I listen to most of the time for analog, because it's far enough away to where it's not bothered by the repeaters.
Okay.
That's my solution, but I have a half acre here to play with.
I got 100 feet.
Yeah, well, 100 feet, yeah, you're not going to be able to get much. If you, depending on the problem you're having, you might be able to narrow down your bandwidth there, and that repeater may not bother you quite so much, but you usually lose frequency agility if you do that. It's really specific. Like, say you wanted to listen to 162.4, 724, or you volunteered a fire department or something, you know, one frequency, and you didn't want to get it numbed out, you could put some filters or cavities on your radio to narrow that bandpass way down so you're not bothered by the repeater. But if you want to go wider than a single channel, it's much more difficult to do. So name your poison, you know. Is it the volunteer fire department, or is it digital radio?
Yeah.
Elevation can also be your friend if you can get the antenna up higher than the others that are around you.
Yeah, vertical separation is
the
a
cone
big
of
help.
silence underneath. But you have to jack it up a good 30 or 40 feet for that to really become effective.
And it's got to be vertical. I mean, you truly need to be directly above or directly below. If you go offset by 5 feet, you lose the advantage of that separation.
Not in my experience. We have a repeater antenna on a water tank, a city water tank up on Bull Mountain between Beaverton and Tigard. And we were having ka-chunks when the city's telemetry would come through.
Yeah.
And the antennas were separated by like one length of cattle fence, like 8 feet or whatever. We raised ours just barely above the other and completely eliminated all the interference we were getting from the other transmitter.
Yep. And of course, coding your receiver helps too. PL or DCS, at least you won't hear it. It'll still numb your radio potentially, but you won't be bothered by the noise.
It was getting into our signal. It wasn't so much.
Oh, it was mixing.
We do run PL both directions.
Okay.
But we would, when somebody was talking on the repeater, we would hear a shunk ka-chunk every few seconds, and just separating them completely eliminated all the noise from the other transmitter.
If you guys haven't been to a repeater site where you've got high power transmitters and scores of antennas all stacked on towers and they're out of space. So what they do is they put the antennas within a few feet of each other and pump 100 watts or more out those antennas from just a few feet away. So it's a tremendous effort to make things work up there. And most of the time it's done with cavities, filters, duplexers, multi-couplers, all sorts of filtering stuff. But the key is it's only a single frequency you're trying to deal with, or 2 or 3 maybe. But hams, have these multi-band radios and they listen to a whole bunch of different frequencies, and you can't filter out all those frequencies like you can a single one with a cavity or a set of bottles, whatever, however you approach it. But you can neck these things down to where they're 100 hertz wide, and if you deviate your frequency 100 hertz, the bandpass falls off 3 dB. I mean, they're that tight, that narrow, tighter than any CW filter on HF. But it's all big bucks. It's a pain. So in Gary's case, he's at his house, and there's no RF for all around him, except his own user stuff. And now he's fighting that repeater, and that kind of was the point, because he's frequency agile. So it's going to be more difficult for him to notch out that that repeater so that his radios don't get desensed. So multiply that at a mountaintop by 50, 100 transmitters, and it's just a nightmare. So Gary, good luck.
Thank you.
By the way, Gary's that's the newest, well, almost the newest repeater we've put up. As at his house, it's up 30 feet or so.
30 feet.
Yeah, and it gets a fair coverage because most of the stuff around him is at sea level because he's right on the coast. But moving inland, he's got a bit of a problem. It does, I don't know, 12, 15 miles maybe. But it wasn't it was never thought to be a wide area repeater. It was just to bring DMR to a destination. Believe it or I didn't know about Ocean Shores, but it's, I guess, a destination. Rod, I see, is in there tonight. He has family in Ocean Shores or in the area, so he can use it.
Yep.
So that's why we did that. And Gary volunteered. We put out, a year ago, a poll. If not a poll, we asked for, hey, anybody have a site that might be good for even fill-in purposes, not necessarily high level like a real mountaintop, but just something that would fill in an area, kind of like we do with Seattle Metro, just to cover downtown and the port. Well, Gary responded, and it took a while, but we ultimately got a repeater there. And I think it's a pretty good asset because it's a destination. I mean, from our side, the way we look at it, yeah, it's great to let 4 hams in the area talk on DMR. That's cool, but it still costs a lot of money to deploy a repeater. So the destination aspect, I think, is a good thing. So Rod, I don't think you've been there and used it yet, but I suspect you will be.
Sometime this summer, maybe.
Yeah.
Hey Gary, Roan's got a special on towers if you want to put up a 500-foot tower.
We are talking about it. Down where the old fire department used to be, they got a really nice high tower. And the fire department and emergency out here, we're talking about hanging something on it. Would work. I don't know if it would make the signal go into Holquim, but if we had like 5 or 6 D9 cats, we could move this one hill out of the way. Everything would work.
Or get a box up there on Holquim somewhere and let it go both directions.
Yeah.
But anyway, you were available and we don't have something up there. Cosmopolis is kind of the next town over, I think, from Holquim. And who is that? Scott?
Yeah.
For years has been going to put up a repeater. And it just never happened. So Gary came along, had the site, and we gathered up the equipment. And Gary, you did the poll. I think you did the poll, and then and the space and internet.
Yeah.
And it happened. So we're still willing to do that at other areas, that can benefit the network. So always looking for new sites. Well, on that happy note, I need to get going. So I'm going to go away. I'm going to stay in the room, but I'm going to get away from the machine for a little while. Thanks for sticking around. Actually, there's 13 still in. I think we started with 12. So you guys hung in there. Thank you.
Well, thanks for all the information.
I don't think this will publish, by the way, it's recorded, but this is not something I think is worth putting up on YouTube.
Well, maybe the stuff that you were going over, like the support pages and things. But
yeah, well, I'll send it over to my Zoom editor and let him diddle with it and see what he can pull out of it. Brad.
Thanks for the info.
Yeah, sure. I'll do what I can do.
Okay, well, I'm out of here. Good night, y'all.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us all.
Guys.
And we'll do it again next week.
You bet. Good night.
All right.